Hello our farmers, and welcome again to your Seed Co cropping and crop production tips. Today we focus on harvesting tips, in particular maize shell out percent. And so what is maize shell out percent? To do this video, we would like to demonstrate it in two dimensions. First of all, maize shell out is the percentage of the grain in relation to the cob. Now this is the cob, and then this is the grain, as you may know. And so at Seed Co, we would like to tell the farmers that what you grow when you grow maize is the grain, but of course the maize plant has got other plant parts. And so at Seed Co, all our varieties, when we say it starts with the right seed, it's because all our varieties have got 80% and over, 80% plus, up to 90% of grain compared to core weight. So that your cob is going to weigh 20% and 80% is going to be grain on every one of your cobs that you harvest. That is what shell out percentage is. So from there, how do you now estimate it? There is two dimensions. When your crop is still in the field, after it has attained physiological maturity, and it's now beginning to dry down to ideal moisture for harvesting, you can take a walk in your field, admire your crop, pick a few cobs. When you break the cobs in half, you will then see what we call the kiss of yield. And then you draw one kernel of grain from one end of the circular cob to the and another grain of corn, another kernel of corn from the other end, and you draw them together and see if they meet. If they meet, that's loosely called the kiss of yield. For Seed Co varieties, they both meet and some of them even overlap. Now if they meet, you do have your 80% shell weight. If they overlap, you even have more than 80 and you're running towards 90, and that's what we call having a bumper harvest. And that's why we are Seed Co, where when you start your journey with the right seed, you wind up at the home of bumper harvest. The second dimension to shell out weight percent estimation, which now becomes closer to the actual, is when you are now harvesting your grain and you get 3 or 4 representative cob samples, and you go and sit in a still place and you have your digital scale with you. If you have one, you have a plate that you will use to shell the corn. You either use your hands or you use a corn sheller, a hand corn sheller, and then you shell the grain off into a plate. And when you've had your grain shelled into a plate, you weigh the weight of the grain onto a scale. You record your weight, usually ranges between 300 and 400 grams, depending on how big the cob was, and you take that weight, your first weight. When you have weighed that, you take off the grain, and then you weigh the cob from which you removed the grain. And when you put it on the scale, most of our Seed Co cobs will weigh for you between 65 to 75 grams. And then you get that 65 as a percentage of the whole. So it's 65 or 70 plus the 350 that you had, it's 400. And you begin to relate that as a percentage ratio. So you had 65 from the core, over your 350, you find you are around 17-18% contribution to weight. And then you get your grain weight, which was 350, over your 400, you find you are between 82 and 85% grain weight. That means that you have landed yourself in a home of bumper harvest, because when you compare around with the other maize varieties, they will not go close to giving you that high, because they are bred more for core weight than for grain weight, and there's all sorts of scientific explanations to that, but that science doesn't add to your yield. So the next time you are choosing a variety, choose Seed Co because we are the home of bumper harvest.